welcome, Hoosier fans, to another thoroughly disgusted episode of the Assembly Call, as today your Indiana Hoosiers back up their thrilling win over Iowa with an inexcusable 74-70 home loss to Rutgers, a game that snapped Rutgers' 5-game losing streak, a game in which Indiana actually hit 10 3-pointers and yet somehow found a way to lose at home. I believe I heard that this was Rutgers' first ever win at Assembly Hall. Isn't that fitting? The loss drops Indiana to 9-7 overall, 4-5 in conference play, and pretty much fritters away all of the good feelings that we had after Indiana went on the road and beat Iowa. And, you know, as we're going to talk about today, this is a game that really falls squarely on the shoulders of two people, I think, and that's Trayce Jackson-Davis and Archie Miller. Trayce Jackson-Davis had one of his worst performances in a game where Indiana got some good performances from other guys who don't normally step up. Trayce was non-existent for most of the day, and on the side of Archie Miller, Indiana just wasn't ready to play. You know, last season, Indiana won 4 games over top 25 teams. Every time out the next time, they lost to a team that was not as good as the team that they had beaten previously, and we were hoping that it might be a little bit different. It wasn't. A predictable loss for the Hoosiers in such a dispiriting and disappointing way. I'm your host, Jerod Morris. I'm here with Coach Brian Tonsoni, Andy Bottoms, and we weren't sure if Ryan Phillips was going to show up, but sure enough, when a rant is needed, Ryan is here to provide it. So let's start this show the way that we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. And for the banner moment today, I'm actually going to go back to about the midway point through the second half. Rutgers was ahead 55-41 and really looked like they were about to run away with this thing. In firm control of the game. And Khristian Lander stepped up and knocked down a 3-pointer after some nice hustle by Jordan Geronimo to get an offensive rebound. You know, and it was a 3-pointer Lander hit. He made it from the right corner. He had taken a shot a couple possessions before, a long 2, and just missed it long. But he shot it confidently, and I thought to myself, you know what? His next shot's going in because that shot was online. That's the best his shot has looked in a long time. Sure enough, he knocked down that 3. He would knock down another one later on. And it was the first time that Khristian Lander has really given this team a spark, and Indiana really needed it at that point. So we're going to talk about all the bad from this game, and there was a lot of bad, but there is a significant glimmer of hope if today was a sign of some things to come from Khristian Lander, that the defensive improvement that we've seen over the last 2 games, which in a lot of ways continue today. He had a couple rough defensive possessions, but also had a couple nice jobs bodying up Young in the lane, and he was much more solid, not the sieve that he's been, but that combined with actually providing some production on offense. We talked so much in the offseason about how his development would be the biggest thing for this season. You know, here we are, late January. Maybe he's starting to figure it out a little bit. Who knows? Maybe this is a one-game thing also. We won't know. But if it's a sign of things to come, that is a huge development on an otherwise, you know, pretty worthless afternoon for Indiana. That is one thing we may be able to take from this game that we can carry forward. Also, great hustle by Jordan Geronimo. You know, and I don't know, on a day when Indiana just couldn't get to loose balls, wasn't tough enough, maybe having Jordan Geronimo out there a little bit more to get some loose balls and provide some toughness would have helped. But he didn't really get the chance to do it, and Indiana ends up losing. And here we are, another angry postgame show. All right, our banner moment, as always, brought to you by our friends at Home Field Apparel, now in their 4th season of sponsoring the Assembly Call. And with winter here and hoodie weather officially arrived, you need to make your way over to their website, homefieldapparel.com. They have something unique for everyone, especially IU fans, and all of their apparel is printed on the softest, warmest, most comfortable, and washable materials that you will find anywhere. Yesterday, I was in my crew neck Indiana Hoosiers, the shoes logo. I was in that sweater all day long. The day before that, I was wearing my Assembly Call, the oatmeal colored hoodie. I had that on the whole day. So pretty much every day is a Home Field Apparel day, and it should be for you too. And remember, it's not just IU gear. Home Field has apparel for more than 90 different colleges and universities, with new ones being added all the time. And their designs are so unique, interesting, and vintage that, you know, you may end up like Coach and Andy, pretty much just buy shirts and hoodies for schools you've barely heard of just because you like the design. And you can always save on your Home Field order by using the promo code ASSEMBLY20 at checkout. It will give you 20% off your entire order throughout the year. So go to homefieldapparel.com, load up your shopping cart, and enter ASSEMBLY20 at checkout to get 20% off your order. That's homefieldapparel.com. All righty, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. Ryan has demanded the mic first, and so we will give it to him on a day that definitely deserves a rant. Ryan, the floor is yours.
Rutgers hadn't won since December, and Indiana. Let's be real. What this was, it was about effort and intensity and focus. That's all it was. This wasn't a skill thing where Rutgers just had a ridiculous game. Indiana wasn't focused. They read their press clippings after the Iowa win about how great their defense is, came back home, and then didn't play defense and didn't show effort. I mean, how many times did they get beaten to loose balls, to easy rebounds that they had to have? Things like three guys going up for a rebound, the ball bouncing off right into a Rutgers player's hands. I mean, this is just it's the story of Archie Miller's tenure. It's one step forward, you make a great win at Iowa, and take two massive steps back against Rutgers, and now you're back in the hole. You're no better off than you were before the Iowa win, and it's mind-boggling. And the problem is, and we're going to call people out. This is on the upperclassmen. Al Durham played horrible. Rob Finney, who won the game ball at Iowa and played maybe the best game of his Indiana career, awful today. He was minus 13. No effort, no intensity. Just was content to just pass the ball around the perimeter. He carved in a few times early and then with the ball, and then just wanted to wander around the perimeter. And then the other guy we're going to call out is Trayce Jackson-Davis. This was quite possibly his worst performance as an Indiana Hoosier, given the circumstances, given that you needed to back up that Iowa win and you were playing a bad team that you need to beat at home. If this happens at Rutgers, you say, well, it's hard to win on the road in the Big Ten. No, you don't do this at home. And he came out and he was soft on both ends of the floor. Trayce, you want to be an NBA player? Guess what? Scouts are looking at this video and they're going to pick you apart because there was no effort, no intensity, just no pride on either end for a lot of these guys. Indiana was at its worst when Durham, Franklin, and Trayce were on the floor. I mean, a week ago, if you had said that, you'd think, and you'd think it was crazy. But guess what? These guys just showed no effort and no heart. There was no heart in that game. None whatsoever. And the guys who came out and played well and showed heart were Anthony Leal, Khristian Lander, and Jordan Geronimo. And I'll give Race Thompson some credit too. I thought he took a dumb shot at the end, but other than that, at least he was trying to play hard. Nobody else brought any effort. And I'm putting that on the coaches as well. As Jerod said, they were not ready to play. They were not ready to play. They got beat down early and then sort of staunched the bleeding. And at the end of the first half, they started giving up easy baskets again. This is every time they get within about 3, they'd start to make stupid plays. There was one point where they had back-to-back possessions, down 3, a chance to cut into the lead, and all the momentum of the world, and they just gave the ball away. Armaan Franklin tries to go over the top he gets a rebound, great rebound, starts moving the ball up the floor. You've got all the momentum in the world. All the momentum is behind you. And he tries to throw a full court pass to Jordan Geronimo, who wasn't open, and throws it directly out of bounds. Same mistake he made against Iowa when he tried to go full court to Trayce Jackson-Davis, when you don't need to make that play in that situation. Bring it down, run some offense, and get the ball to your post player. Or reverse it. You're hitting threes today for some reason. Hit a 3. Do something. You've got Rutgers on your heels. Instead, you throw it directly out of bounds. Next time down, and then there was a time down where Anthony Leal tried to throw into the post, and Trayce Jackson-Davis didn't seal his man. Simple thing he does all the time. Didn't seal his man. There was no effort from Trayce to post and repost today. He would come down, get in position. If he didn't get the ball, he just wander around the paint, not trying to repost. He go set a screen, do a soft cut into the middle. He wasn't looking for the ball. And you know what? You want to have pride in yourself. You want to win games. You want to get over, as he's talked about, I want to win these games. I want to get over the things we've been doing in the past and be better now. Well, you got to play better than that. And so if you want to put this on people, you put it on the upperclassmen, you put it on your team leader, Trayce Jackson-Davis, who none of whom came to play today. And so I blame Archie Miller as well. Of course, the staff, these guys were not ready to go. And it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing as a fan to watch all day. Just watch Rutgers, of all teams, carve you up and earn their first victory ever at Assembly Hall. You wanted this team to be different, Trayce Jackson-Davis? Well, they are. They're the first Indiana team to ever lose against Rutgers at home. So there you go. You're different now. I'm sorry. I can't sit here and sugarcoat anything from today. They got it down close at the end, and what'd they do? They're within 2 scores, and they're just wandering through offensive possessions. There's no plan. They're just wandering around the perimeter. Nobody wants to grab the ball, grab the initiative, and take the shot. They're just passing it off to the next guy. It was like hot potato. Rob Finney, your junior point guard captain, gets the ball and immediately looks for somebody to give it to. Armaan Franklin takes it and dribbles and shoots a fadeaway 17-footer. Like, that's your offense late when you got to score baskets. That's on the coaching staff and the players, but largely it's on the guys who didn't come to play today. And there were plenty of them. And you know what? It's disappointing because they had a chance to really do something after beating Iowa. And they did really do something, which was a whole lot of nothing. So now we're back at square one. They're not going to play for another week. Maybe they come out and win one there. But do we have any confidence that they're going to win the next game against, was it Illinois, and then follow that up with another win? No, we don't, because this is what they do. They win a big game and then fall off a cliff. And that's what we've been dealing with for 4 years. So no, thoughts in my mind that it's ever going to change, because this is just what we've come to expect. So good job with the no effort today, boys. Hope you have a nice week off.
Well said, Ryan. Hey, on the bright side, we've kind of hit rock bottom again, which means a good performance may be coming next game.
Yeah, and we'll beef ourselves up and then all of a sudden jump off another cliff and hit another new low.
To be fair, anybody who listened to the last show will remember that we kept couching everything on the Iowa analysis with, but we have to see what they do the next game. But we have to see, and here we saw.
How do you follow it up? That's the key to everything. How do you follow it up? Do you follow up a bad loss with a good win? Oh, they did. How do you follow up that good win? Do you build on it? Nope. Jump right off that cliff again and make some a-hole from San Diego yell at you on the radio. So that's just, that's where we are, and that's where we're going to be for a while. I don't foresee this changing and getting all of a sudden getting way better anytime soon. We've had 4 years to deal with this. All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Enjoy your football Sunday, Ryan. Thanks for joining us. All right. Well, after that,
enjoy breaking this down. By the way,
it's going to be a real pleasure. All right. After that uplifting segment there from Ryan Phillips, let's go over to Andy Bottoms. Andy, your Bottoms line on this disappointing Indiana loss.
Yeah, I don't know that Rob played all that well, but I didn't think he was probably in the same category as the others. I know Ryan kind of singled him out. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But for me, this was in the same sense that the team seemed to kind of let down after they got the momentum from beating Iowa. They did the same thing in a lot of different situations during this game. And I think that was, when I look back, just so many little plays here and there that they didn't make. I texted you guys about this even at halftime where, there's a loose ball in the corner. Al seems to have it. Let somebody wrestle it away from him. You give up a lob. You get that dunk from TJD to end the half, and then you come back and you give up a layup on a putback where you just didn't block somebody out at the end of the half. And then you come out in the second half and dig yourself a hole by turning the ball over 5 straight times in the first 6 possessions and not playing good enough defense and letting them build a lead like that. But even in the end, as bad as you played for the majority of the game, you put yourself in positions where you had the ball with chances to keep the momentum and just made silly decisions. They had those back-to-back putback dunks from Trace and Jordan Geronimo. That was when Armaan made the play where he tried through the full court pass that Ryan talked about. But you get another stop. You come back down. TJD goes in, gets blocked again. Then you give up a 3 on the other end. You get bailed out by a taunting call, which I thought was fairly lame, but it did benefit IU. You end up with a 5-point possession there by making the free throws and a 3. But then you come back after that and you give up a wide open layup on an inbounds play where it's just a total breakdown defensively. Then Armaan, you get another 3 back. You get a stop and you get the ball back. Turn it over again. Just so many times where they had opportunities and just couldn't string together enough smart plays to really get over the hump. And I think had you been able to get back and tie the game at some point, then you put that pressure back on Rutgers where it's here we go again, we're losing. But IU just shot themselves in the foot so many times over the course of the game when they had chances to make momentum, despite some really, really bad stretches of play, particularly on the defensive end, and just couldn't do it. And in the same way they couldn't build on the success of the Iowa game from game to game, they couldn't build on successes they had within the game. And at some point, to what you said, the way we were certainly excited about the Iowa win, but reserved in terms of what that meant for the future, like a game like this shows you why, both outside of both game to game and within the game. And that to me is what's frustrating, is just the kind of lack of growth, maturity, whatever you want to attribute that to, that doesn't allow you to build on those kinds of successes.
Coach, your thoughts on this game? Are we is our initial reaction too harsh?
No, when you lose, it's not good. I mean, you play to win the game.
Well, you had 20 minutes while Ryan talked to process it, so I thought maybe
I think to be fair, a wounded dog or animal backed into a corner is always dangerous. And I was worried about Rutgers today. They were ranked 11th at one time, so I don't take Ryan's with Rutgers thing. The Big Ten is huge, and I don't agree with that. I think that's just looking at Indiana in a prism that, we won banners and we should beat anyone who's, not named Indiana. I don't think that's fair. That being said, it was all about edge today. And Rutgers, having lost 5 in a row, on the verge of being out of the tournament. Some people had them in, some people had them falling out of the tournament. This was a must-win for them and a chance to get one, and they played like it. And Indiana didn't match that edge. And it was mentioned in Ryan's rant and Andy's bottom line there that there were enough possessions in a 4-point game where you didn't match that edge. And the frustrating thing is trying to figure out why Indiana plays better on the road this year. All of their better performances have come on the road. They've had 2 wins. They played well in Asheville. Florida State's looking like they're going to win the ACC, took that game into overtime. They play better on the road than they do at home. That's the disappointing thing. And yet they beat a Maryland team at home who's gone on the road, and they're 3-6 in the Big Ten. And everyone thinks Maryland's bad and we should have blown them out by 20, and Maryland's beaten 3 ranked teams on the road. Yeah, there's a lot. We'll point out that Indiana should have won this game, and there's no reason that for the loss, to be honest. But we also got to be realistic and look at the Big Ten is absolutely brutal. And every game, you have to bring that edge. You can't relax at all. I thought our guys relaxed a little bit over the course of the game. I don't think they didn't play hard. I thought that when they don't play well, it's lack of awareness more than it is not playing hard. I mean, they're diving on the floor. They had bench energy, but the awareness on there was a fast break putback by TJD doesn't run back hard. He's not aware that he can still make an effort on that play. Jerome Hunter, I think at least 15 to 18 points because of his lack of awareness of switching, which I know has been practiced, and I know that was the game plan. But when you don't have an edge, your awareness drops. And when the other team has an edge, they're going to find and take advantage of that awareness. That's the basketball X and O's of why this game happened. It's not sugarcoating anything. Indiana has to be better. But if you don't have an edge and play up to your standards every game, the Big Ten's going to smack you. And it doesn't matter who's there. So you could throw out all of the standards. Oh, it's Rutgers. Oh, it's Nebraska. Oh, it's Northwestern. The Big Ten is brutal, game in and game out. And you saw yesterday, Minnesota loses at home. Wisconsin loses at home. The home court advantage in the Big Ten is gone with this COVID thing. Should it be? We could debate that. It obviously is gone for the Hoosiers because they just don't play well at home right now. And that's on the whole program. That's my take is there was enough good today to win the game, and there was enough bad to lose the game. And why they play poorly, more poorly at home to lose these games or have to win games in overtime. It's just a softness, a mental softness and lack of edge, in my opinion.
Yeah, go Andy.
I think for me, just to go on that, I think that softness or edge or whatever you want to say is you play a team like Iowa that makes things easier for you than they might normally be, at least relative to what you'd expect. You allow, you get some confidence, you go through that, you start to play well, that carries over. Rutgers, no matter how bad they've played over these other games, and they haven't necessarily played well, but there's a physical nature to what they do and an aggressiveness that they do where they really made it a point to come out and be the aggressor. And I thought IU backed down from that in a lot of cases. I thought TJD got his first 2 shots blocked, and I felt like he then was reluctant to go after them. So to me, Rutgers is as bad as their record would indicate. And IU probably wasn't, like we said after the game, IU probably wasn't as good as they looked at Iowa, but Iowa allowed IU to gain confidence and Rutgers never did. And on the flip side of that, you have a team coming in that's lost a bunch of games in a row. If you really come out and play well, and I was the first defensive possession from IU was really, really good, super active. And then it was like, well, we got one stop. And then they let them score in 6 straight possessions. So you let a team that's coming in without confidence, without whatever, be the aggressor, get the ball wherever they wanted for the most part. Tons of shots right by the basket because of either switching and coverages and guys not being in the right spot. A lot of open threes that you gave up because guys are late closing out or getting hung up different places. And to me, IU did to Rutgers what Iowa did to IU on whatever night that was, Thursday night, and let them get comfortable, let them build confidence, and then we're never able to really seize it back.
Andy, you're so right with the physical. Rutgers is known for defense. They have been, which has been the build, right? And why, the only bright spot we could look at this season is maybe a better defense. But they came out and were physical. They were switching. And what did our guards do? They got passive. So the ball, TJD, passive, bad angles, trying to go through people instead of going around people. Wasn't posting hard, wasn't holding seal. So when the balls got thrown into him, the defenders got around him and knocked him away for turnovers. So the physical nature and the switching pushed our offense out. And you needed a north-south guy, and we've said that from day one. We don't have a north-south guy. I'm not sure even if we did with two post players hogging the lane and a bunch of people in the lane, that would even work as well. But that's why Lander was better today, because Lander posed a threat of beating people off the dribble. And I really can't wait to talk about Lander, because, you got to – it is our team. You got to find some positives in a horrible day. But Lander, if he can start guarding like he did today, and he wasn't perfect, but he can give that, I'm going to beat you north-south, and I'm going to jab step you and pull up and hit a three, which our other guards don't. So it was a combination of our guards got taken out of throwing the ball in. And there's one point, gentlemen, it was 22-16, and there's a timeout. Ball went to TJD, ball went to TJD, ball went to TJD, ball went to Race in the lane 4 times after a timeout. And I'm just as disappointed in Coach Miller as anyone else, too. But there's a timeout saying, get the ball inside. Then all of a sudden, they got back to the players, and then it got a turnover, a missed two by a TJD, but then threes and late shot clocks there at the end of the first half, because they allowed that pressure to back up. And if you need to call timeouts, where it's not like football where you can have an offensive coordinator and you see what the defense is doing and you can send it in and play. Players have to play during the game and make decisions within the game. And again, the coach's job is to make sure practice is tough enough to where they can make them. So it's on everybody. But, it was just, you're absolutely right. The physical nature and the heart and desire of Rutgers just smacked us. And we've shown a history with this group of guys that when we get smacked, we don't necessarily respond right away. And I will say this: they did fight down towards the end, because I thought it was out of reach, and they fought back to make it a 1-possession game. But
the issue is you just never get there. That right there is a microcosm of this program. It's like, okay, we got down 14, and now we're going. We dropped to 3-4 in the conference, and now we're going to uncork a great performance in Iowa City. That's what seems to happen. I tweeted midway through the second half, Archie needs to give the rock bottom speech. We've seen it so many times. This team falls down, they play desperate, and they play better. But that's how you have to play when your formula to win is tough defense, being tough inside on two-pointers and getting to the free throw line. That's how you have to play, clearly, because you can hit 10 3-pointers out of 16 attempts and still lose. And so, as we kind of wrap up this first segment, there's a lot of things went wrong for Indiana today. And I think team-wide, Rutgers just had more desperation. They got to more loose balls. When there was a play there to be made to swing momentum one way or the other, Rutgers was the team that made it. But I think you can boil everything down, because on the bright side, we talked about Lander's offense in the second half. Those 6 points were huge. Jerome Hunter provided 9 really big points in the first half. That was a big offensive lift for Indiana. You got 14 points from Armaan Franklin. It wasn't particularly efficient, but you got some production. Trace Jackson-Davis got some of the help today that he doesn't usually get. And his burden as a star, as a guy ranked number 2 in the Ken Pom Player of the Year rater, as a guy who was talked about heading into the season as an All-American, your burden in a game like this, when your teammates produce like they did, is to bring it home. And he seemed afraid of being physical defensively, maybe getting into foul trouble against Iowa contributed to some of that. But we've also just seen some of these performances from him where he's kind of listless and he doesn't get into it and things go wrong early in the game and he's not able to bounce back. Some games he has been, and we've lauded him on the show for, hey, that was a great bounce back by Trace. He really got it going in the second half when Indiana needed it, and that just didn't happen. And, that Indiana is not going to win games this year for the most part when Trace isn't the best player on the court. Today his numbers, they're okay, like 13 points, 7 rebounds, a couple of blocks, a couple of steals. The numbers aren't horrible, but they also don't tell the story of his impact, which felt really minimal. And he allowed Ron Harper Jr. to be clearly the best player on the court. And if Rutgers is going to come in and Ron Harper is going to be the best player, they're probably going to beat Indiana. It's that simple. And so Trace has gotten a lot of plaudits. He's, been kind of the assumed game ball a lot of times this year. And with that expectation and with his ability and with what he's shown us he can do, that also comes, I think, in a game like today, tough criticism when he doesn't bring it. Because it just felt like, he wasn't posting as hard. It felt like he didn't want the ball, like he didn't want the action as much, or at least he wasn't working hard enough to get it. And, that's the formula. A lot of other things actually went okay for Indiana today, statistically, that could have resulted in a win. An ugly win, and we would have been picking apart the warts and all that, but you still might have won like 77-74 if you just get a good game from Trace. He didn't even need to be great. Instead, he was really subpar. And that, to me, is the most disappointing thing, because this Indiana team is going to go how Trace goes. He's talked a lot about being different, to Ryan's point, and he just didn't bring it today. And I think he deserves a fair share of the blame that he's going to get. Hopefully he learns from it and is better down the stretch, because this team should be better. He's better than this. And that's the thing that disappoints me the most about this game.
The book on him is he's having difficulty with physical players and size. I mean, that's what's out there. And you saw it today with the 2 post players of Rutgers and the physicality of Rutgers. And Harper was digging down, too, off a race and really making it tough on him, that when he can go one-on-one, or he can get a catch at the elbow, or he can get a catch on a side ball screen and go up and make a move strong, that's when he's at his best. When he has to go around someone or through someone, he's really not as good as he needs to be. And today they forced him to go through people. They never gave him angles. You saw a little bit in the second half and in that run that I showed you where they put him in at the elbow catches and the side ball screens. But, boy, they were loading up for him too. And, yeah, I agree. And even more so than that, the rebounding, I thought there were some rebounds that were offensive rebounds at key times that he wasn't very active in going and getting. That one on transition just showed, again, whether it's frustration for not getting the ball or not scoring, the ball's going the other end, it's next play. Next play, get back there, and that's 2 points right there in a 4-point game down the stretch.
Yeah.
That really makes a difference. And he's been a great player. He will be a great player, and we need him. And even great players have off nights. But for Indiana, he really can't. And that was, but he wasn't even posting hard.
Right.
He was just standing. He was so vertical in his game and just stepping to the block instead of trying to root out people. I thought he shied away from the physicality.
If he was just struggling to make shots, it would be different. But
right.
His energy felt like a microcosm of what happened with the team in a larger sense. And, this is where I will lobby or kind of lay some criticism at Archie's feet. Number one, to understand what's going on with Trace and to figure out what buttons to push to get him going. That didn't happen. And, there's going to be certain games where that doesn't happen. I don't know how much you can blame the coach for that. But I think on a game when energy and enthusiasm aren't there and Jordan Geronimo only gets 6 minutes, I thought this was a tough matchup for him. It seems crazy to say that guarding Luka Garza is a better matchup, but given Rutgers' physicality and some of the things they do, I thought Jordan might struggle, but I thought he played pretty well when he was in there. And it actually seemed like an opportunity, given what he did against Iowa, and then given what he did in the game, an offensive rebound putback some more. When you're not getting it from Trace, maybe you give Jordan Geronimo some more minutes. And maybe it's insane to say that that's the answer, to give that guy more minutes, but in a 4-point game, maybe the guy who at least is going to give you some enthusiasm and toughness is the guy that you roll out there a little bit more. For whatever reason, it was Archie's job to find the answers today, and he didn't find the answers. And so when we keep seeing these kind of listless performances in big spots, I don't know exactly what the answer is. I'm also not paid $3.5 million to find it. Archie didn't find it, so we can lay all these guesses out there that we want. At the end of the day, this is another really, really bad loss on his resume. And, look, sometimes it's the coach and the star player. They've got to get you home in games like this. And those two guys just didn't do it. Any final thoughts on that, Andy?
Yeah, I thought with Trace, you look back at the shots that he made. He made 4 field goals on the day. One of it was on the lob against the zone that was kind of a really good set up to draw. I think it was Omarui at the time, up the lane, race flash to the foul line, got him up. I mean, but that's a lob dunk. He's not making a move on that. That's a well-designed play. He got another one on a putback dunk. He got another one where he was out handling the ball around the free throw line and around the elbow. Guy on Rutgers kind of lunges to try to steal the ball. He gets the corner and gets an and one on it. But even that, I mean, yeah, they've done that some, but it's not in the post. And the other one was an inside move, but I feel like he got dished the ball when he was open. I don't think it was actual like post move. So my point is, I'm not sure he scored 1 point off of actual moves in the post. And I think part of that was Johnson doing a really good job in his length. He was really aggressive, kind of playing over top of guys and being able to get his hands and deflect a lot of balls and take, cut down some of the passing angles like that. But just not being able to get the ball in a position where he was able to score effectively on post moves at all is somewhat telling. And I think the Geronimo, I thought he did an okay job on Harper when he guarded him. I thought Race did a pretty good job on him for lots of times. Harper made a few real tough turnarounds, kind of foul line extended that are tough shots that you're going to just have to live with somebody making. So I didn't think he was a liability. And to Coach's point, your option was him or Jerome Hunter. Now, Jerome Hunter brought offense in the first half when he came in, but he gave a lot of it back on the other end of the floor just based on what he was doing defensively. So, yeah, it felt like but at the same time, Archie sat Al and Rob for a long stretch in the second half. I thought the team played better when they were off. So it was like I felt like he had a decent read on some of those scenarios. And even – I think it was in the first half, it felt like you played a lineup like that and you'd kind of squeezed all you could out of them and you got guys waiting at the table to come back in and, couldn't do it. But yeah, I think the pattern to your point of following up a great win with a clunker definitely is becoming a pattern that as a coach, you don't want to start to be known for.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's move on here to segment 2 coming up as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's disappointing loss. We'll point out today's meaningful moments you might have missed. Then we'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from this game and much more. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
Hi, this is Jawan Morgan. What's the only thing better than getting IU's first triple-double in 47 years? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join Jerod, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the Assembly Call after every IU basketball game. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Juwan. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I am Jerod Morris here with the coach Brian Tonsoni and Andy Bottoms, and we are breaking down Indiana's 74-70 loss to Rutgers. Such a disappointing way for Indiana to follow up their big victory at Iowa City by dropping a home game to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. It's time, guys, for today's meaningful moments that you might have missed. And, I want to point out one guy whose performance numbers-wise was a little bit inefficient, but I really thought, gave Indiana a lot today, and that was Armaan Franklin. And, there were a couple moments in the second half, one at the 14-minute mark when Indiana's down 51-38. Again, Indiana just needs something to keep going. Armaan steps up and hits a long three-pointer from the top of the key. Then later on in the game, with a minute 30 left, again, it's an 8-point game. It feels like, Indiana's just teetering on the brink of not being there. Armaan steps up, makes a three-point shot. He was only 4 of 11 today. We mentioned that, but he was 3 of 4 from downtown. He did turn the ball over 3 times, but given that he was clearly playing on an ankle that is not 100% and hurt it in the first half and was hobbling, I thought really, when not a lot of his teammates played really tough and played as hard as you want, I thought Armaan did. And I thought what he showed there in the second half with his shot making is the guy that he's become, which is kind of what Al Durham was at the end of last season, which is the perimeter guy that when Indiana needs a shot, they run sets for him, and he steps up and wants it. And look, late in the game, I think Indiana might have been down 5. It might have been the possession actually after he made the three-pointer, the very next possession. They had a possession where it ended up over on the left side a lot with him, and he ended up forcing a long 2. And that's not a good shot, and he's taking too many long 2s. But it also feels like there are possessions where his teammates just don't want it, and he's got to try and create some offense, and it ends up in a long 2. And so, I'd like to see him get those shots out of his arsenal, and yet sometimes that's the shot that the offense kind of ends up presenting itself. And so I kind of half blame him and half blame just his teammates in the setup of everything. But, I say all this to say he continues to progress as a sophomore. And so if you want to look at a positive from today's game, what we saw from Khristian Lander in the second half in terms of shot making and what we saw from Armaan Franklin in terms of shot making and wanting to be the guy with the ball in his hands, injury and all, with the pressure, Armaan is showing us that he's that guy. So I didn't think his defense was as good. I'm giving him a little bit of a pass because he's playing on a bum ankle. He still gave you the effort and toughness. He was one of the bright spots for me in terms of how he played and just his development. I think those two underclassmen, who knows what they'll turn into. But I think they're both showing us signs, at least today in these last, Armaan has been showing us signs all season, Lander a little bit today in the last few games, that, they may be ready to step up and challenge, Rob and Al for backcourt supremacy right now if Al and Rob don't play better than they did today. So that I think was a positive. Coach, you're nodding along. Your thoughts on Armaan? I
think that's well said. I don't think Armaan had his greatest game. I think maybe he just played an average Armaan game, which for right now has been elevated because of his play. The points, I thought after he hurt his ankle, I thought he had a really hard time guarding the bounce, and people were able to drive. There's a couple times he overhelped and everything, but he's a sophomore, and sometimes sophomores will make sophomore mistakes. That's not to excuse them because you coach to perfection. But, boy, Armaan's gritty, dives on the floor, hits some big shots, has really become a good three-point shooter. And there's some player development if we want to, look at a positive there with the program. He has been, I think, for me, the favorite find or favorite positive of the season. In a season that's just frustrating, some wins, some losses, his development and the knowing that you're going to have him for 2 more years and he's going to get even better. I think you said it best. He brings and elevates that level of toughness. And if that's what is needed and is a work in progress, it's awful slow. This progress, if there is any at all, it's just so at a snail's pace with this program. He is a prime example of that. And it's next play with him. He gets a blow by on defense. It's not going to bother him. He's going to stay in it. I'm not sure everyone else is there yet. And maybe that's just maturity on some of the other guys. He's got it as a sophomore. He's got a level of maturity that you can build a winner with. But you need 5 or 6 of them. And I think that's kind of what's missing, is that we don't have more of those Armaan attitudes. When play goes bad, one end or the other, we tend to have 4 or 5 possessions where you need a reboot. Too many reboots with some of these guys, but Armaan reboots himself.
Yeah, and I actually thought, Andy, that Armaan really struggled out of the gates today. But after he sat down for a bit, came in, and for about a 3 or 4 possession stretch, this might have been the one that you mentioned, Coach, he was really committed to getting Trace involved, and it was nice to see. So he kind of rebounded, himself in the game there. But your thoughts on the day from Armaan?
I just felt like on a day we criticized some of the guards for not being very aggressive. You mentioned Lander was a threat. I thought Armaan at least was willing to drive the ball, sometimes to a fault. And I think we've seen that too this season. Sometimes he's aggressive to a fault, trying to make that home run play to Geronimo is another example of that. Like he's going to be aggressive. And unfortunately, that's what this team needs a lot. And you then have to live with some of the decisions that maybe aren't the best where you're trying to do that. But yeah, there was a ton of times, just as I look through possessions down the stretch, like it ends up with him having to take a shot, because I feel like everybody, when things break down and everything's really passive and nobody gets the ball inside, he ends up with the ball on the wing just saying, well, go figure something out. And that leads to some of those long twos, which he's made. And so I struggle a little bit with criticizing him when everybody kind of just hangs him out to dry and says, hey, go make a play on one foot. Which is not to say that he played a perfect game. He didn't shoot the ball that well, but boy, when they needed threes, like he was there to make them. The one play at the top of the key was great, that Stephen Bardo, like that he calls the elevator screen. He and everybody else calls that, like he friggin' invented it. Anyway, but I thought he stepped up in those situations and really made shots. And even the 2 putback dunks that IU got was Armaan going to the rim, knowing that Johnson's going to come over to try to block the shot. And again, when you have guys give the effort and run the floor, we talked about Trace not running back when Miles Johnson gets a putback, where he runs by him and gets it. I mean, IU did the same thing in those possessions, but that happens because you've got guys running the floor and you've got a guy attacking the basket. And that was few and far between today for me. So I struggle a little bit, like you, to be super critical of Armaan, even though he did struggle. And I kind of wondered toward the end of the first half if it wasn't just a case of they didn't want to take him out and let the ankle tighten up and let it get worse. But he was laboring pretty good out there for a pretty long stretch toward the end of the half, and maybe he got it retaped and loosened up a little bit. at halftime. And, but on a team that doesn't have a lot of aggressive guys, the one guy who's consistently aggressive, I just struggle to heap a lot of blame on him after a game like that.
Armaan played well enough for Indiana to win this game. Far from perfect, but he played well enough for Indiana to win this game. Now, on the flip side,
what is Indiana's record? 2-2 since he's been hurt. Like the 2 games he missed, Indiana split, and then when he came back, they won at Iowa, and then today should have won. I think he's our second best player easily by far, and the nearest thing to a closer. And I would be suggesting to run some plays for him.
Yes.
That elevator screen, shocking, Bardo, but that we really need to get him that confidence going early, that to run him off that baseline, those baseline screens, like you run Durham off those baseline screens, because he's just clearly, our second best player, and he's more consistent.
Yeah.
Even through his mistakes, he's more consistent game in and game out.
Other meaningful moment for me goes back to the first half. It's 17-16. And again, this is one of those moments. It's a close game. It's a one-possession game. There's a play to be made. Who's going to make it? Well, there was a loose ball over in the left corner, and Ron Harper Jr. just out-hustled everybody for it, right? Al Durham actually had the ball in his hands, couldn't secure it. Ron Harper just kind of lays his body out, ends up getting the ball. They scored on the next possession. It was Harper, 19-16. Then Harper hit a 3, and boom, just like that, it's 22-16. Kudos to Ron Harper, who was a big-time player today. But for Al, this was a microcosm for me of his entire career struggling in matchups just like this, against tough physical defenses where they really body you up. And I know Al's a little bit slight of frame and all that, but he's also a senior now. And Indiana's just as Indiana's not going to win games with Trace Jackson Davis only scoring this much, Indiana really needs Al to hit that 12, 13, 14-point mark, which he's been averaging over the past 6 games. Today, only 8 points. Too much side-to-side dribbling. Indiana is not going to be good with Al just dribbling side-to-side on offense, but Rutgers made him uncomfortable, bodied him up, and in a game where Indiana really needed him to step up, he just wasn't up to the task. And it's been a tough matchup for him all his career, but you would hope, down the backstretch of his senior season that he'd be able to play a little bit better in it, and unfortunately he wasn't. Andy, you want to speak to that and then make your final comment? I know you have to get going.
Yeah, I thought, and I'd mentioned that same play earlier where it was like, to me, that was not only a microcosm of Al, but I just thought of the game. When there was a play to be made and a loose ball to be had, it was Rutgers. When there was a play, when running the floor was going to mean the difference between, getting back on defense, getting a good shot, like they were more often than not the ones to do it. In terms of him more specifically, his was another odd one where you can go back and you can kind of remember each shot. He hits a 3 to start the game, doesn't score the rest of the half, hits a 2 on the baseline to start on the first possession of the second half where he, kind of made a nice read, flared out to the corner, hit a shot, and then he didn't make another one until he banked in a 3, which I don't know how I don't know how much credit one gives for that at some point. But you made plays to start the game and then just kind of disappeared. But it was so much of that, what you said, of dribbling side to side, not being aggressive, kind of the opposite of what we talked about with Armaan, who was sometimes overly aggressive. But yeah, it just seemed like Al was content to play on the perimeter and swing the ball around and didn't really get anything going toward the basket. And it just, when he's at his best, he's at least doing that, even if he's making plays for others when he's doing that, and trying to get the ball to somebody else, and just wasn't aggressive enough. I think that was a lot of what you saw from IU, where, again, Rutgers was the aggressor. They were physical with IU from the start, and IU too many times wilted from that physicality instead of trying to play through it and get some fouls called. Otherwise, yeah, I gotta go coach a game here.
Hey, congrats to Orange Anderson on the big win.
Yes, I don't know why the Twitter is what it is, but we're the Lady Orange from Anderson, but some reason the Twitter must have gotten taken. So anyway, we got our first win yesterday. Hopefully we make it 2 today.
You better back it up. You better back it up.
Have a letdown after. Yeah,
it's on you, Coach.
Yeah, it probably is. Now, I don't know that I'd say too much different than what we all said in the opening. It just was a disappointing follow-up to a really good game where you start to think that maybe things are clicking. They talked about how the week off did them good, and they got refocused and things like that. And then all that just becomes talk again. And I think that's been the drumbeat of the last few years, of feeling like you're going to turn the corner and then getting the rug pulled out from underneath you when you do that. And again, I think it goes back to a lot of matchup stuff of Iowa lets you get comfortable, Rutgers doesn't. And this is a team that too often kind of wants things to be easy for them. And when they're not, it gets a little bit tougher. So, now it's a little bit hard to say what's going to happen. They've already had a week off schedule with what's going on at Michigan. That game's not going to get played. So you're going to have a pretty long layoff. I'm not sure with most things about this team. I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, quite honestly, to figure out what may happen and what that may lead to. But certainly a disappointing performance coming off of what they had done. And it's ultimately performances like this that are the reason that people are keeping this program at arm's length at this point and not really willing to buy into things having turned the corner. And it's hard to blame them. It's the reason I thought they'd get smoked at Iowa. To go back to that, it's like you just don't know what to expect. So anyway, that's all I got. Have a good rest of the show, fellas, and I'll let you. Well, actually, I probably won't let you know if we have a letdown and lose today. I will let you know. Yeah, if you don't hear from me, I'm in the same boat as IU. So I'll leave it at that.
Sounds good, man.
The meaningful moment. That's the ball game. I think. I think you're spot on right there, and it's indicative of that edge.
Yeah.
Al Durham had the ball first.
Yes.
I was like, call timeout. And next thing I know, the ball's being stolen, kicked up, and just like batted like a volleyball to the rim, and it was actually just tipped in. It wasn't even shot in. And what happens is, and I'd like to go back from a Rutgers perspective and see how many times they think they didn't hustle and gave up shots too. We always look at it at the Indiana perspective, right? But
probably not many today.
Yeah, it had to be an advantage. I was just going to say that I had this. There were 2 contested shots in the first 13 points where they just drove the lane, were contested, and made shots. That's not defensive letdown, but there were 2 defensive errors in that first stretch. And then you had that junk play. Well, that's indicative of not winning the edge, that edge. And you're looking at a 4-point game down the stretch where those things matter. And then just that last play of the half. You get a shot, you get a dunk, you come out of timeout, you diagram a play for man, you diagram a play for zone. The players executed it. It's a 3-point margin, and then you give up an offensive rebound. I think was that it at the end?
Yes, offensive rebound putback.
Offensive rebound putback.
Yeah.
And then there was another offensive rebound putback on a fast break in the second half. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're looking at that's 6 points right there from lack of things you can control. And I think that's very important as a program. And Archie's got to get a handle on this. We have to win the things we can control. You can't control a guy, the Ron Harper turnaround, square up in the air jumper he hit twice.
No, that's unguardable.
You can't control that when that goes in. But what you can do is have a big enough lead when that goes in that those things don't matter. And when you don't get those a couple of those plays, that's 6 points. That's the frustrating part. Mm-hmm. This program where it is right now is that total inconsistency of those little things. And it goes back to your standards, and to me, standards aren't Final Four and Elite Eight and Big Ten championships. They're not. They're how you play the game. And this team is too up and down with the edge, too up and down with being aggressive versus not being aggressive. And that's on the players, that's on everyone, and that's the problem I have. You can be a really good team and get upset in the Sweet 16. You can be a really good team and finish third in the Big Ten, but it's how you play. And this team is not playing well consistently.
Nope. All right, Coach, let's look at a few numbers. Probably not a segment we need to belabor because I just don't think this game was told in the numbers. I think this game was told in the plays between the numbers, in the hustle plays and the getting to loose balls. But, one that really stands out and that I think is actually indicative of that is the shooting numbers. So Indiana shot 63% from three-point range on 16 attempts, 10 of 16. Phenomenal. Indiana shot 71% from the free throw line. Not great, but you'll take it. Now, the number of attempts wasn't great, 17. Indiana needs more than that. But, Coach, Indiana, and this courtesy of Inside the Hall Twitter, Indiana was 10 of 24 on dunks and layups and 4 of 16 on other two-pointers. So, essentially, mid-range two-pointers. Now, again, if you're looking at the formula for how Indiana wins, this is a team that is fourth in the Big Ten in two-point field goal percentage and fourth in free throw rate. Where they didn't get to the free throw line enough, and their field goal percentage on two-pointers was obviously terrible, but it's really twofold. it's number one, not being tough enough or smart enough down low, like not being patient enough to wait for an overzealous shot blocker to make his move and then score, but also not being tough enough to play through contact. But also, coach, 4 for 16 on long twos. Like, this is 2021, you know? Like, every now and then, okay, a mid-range shot. Like, I thought the Race Thompson shot at the elbow when he's wide open, that's a good shot. I would take that, you know? I didn't really have a problem with Khristian Lander's long two that was in rhythm and kind of came through the offense. You're wide open. Like, there are some times to take an open shot there, but not 16 of them, especially if you're only going to make 25% of them. And so that just showed a lack of toughness and a lack of IQ on the offensive end that have been problems for this team when they lose. And that, to me, like, all the other numbers, you can talk about them. The only other number I would say is Indiana, when they're playing really good defense, they get blocks and steals. Today, Indiana had 2 blocks and 6 steals, and that's just not enough. Like, when Trace and Race are really active defensively, they're getting block shots. So, to me, the whole game is told in those numbers right there.
Yeah, and it's just the length and the physicality of Rutgers caused Indiana not to score inside, and that's because we didn't answer with toughness and physicality in our shot prep and in our making. And then you allude to 4 of 16 from long-range twos, then you settle. And we had a lot of late shot clock shots that were counted as shots that had to be forced up, which always hurts your percentage. And you had a couple 30-second violations because, again, we didn't have that punch back. When they punched us defensively with their switching and everything else, we just didn't do it. And inside, it's a game of angles. Unless you're just going to jump up and shoot over someone, that's where I would work with Trace Jackson Davis and the post guys. But there was one where, you know, he caught the ball. There's a great design. It's that play that they run. They run a guy baseline, and Leo caught it, and Trace Jackson Davis was wide open, but he cut to under the rim. So when he caught the basketball, he had to reach back over his head and shoot the ball, and here comes the length, and it blocked his shot instead of taking a rear-end dribble back and contacting the defender and going up and shooting it in. But that's just bad execution. The play is not designed for you to run under the basket and be on the baseline. It's for you to run underneath and get the ball on the strong side block. Yeah. He didn't finish his cut. I saw someone say, well, the pass led him there. Well, if it did, then just back dribble and score it. He got blocked all day today because he just presented the ball to length. You can't present the ball to length. You've got to go around length, or up over length, and he doesn't have that game right now. As good as he is, he just doesn't have that game. He's got to get it.
I think I remember the play you're talking about. It was 57-51, and you really need a little run. It's 57-51, and Trace has the ball in the paint. Right there, you're thinking good things are going to happen. 5 seconds later, it was 60-51 Rutgers.
Yeah,
that's not supposed to happen.
You're going to have a bad day when that happens.
Yeah.
Also when you have a loose ball that kicks up for a tip-in play, a loose ball rebound, and they kick it out for a 3 when you're trying to make a run. I'm not making excuses. It's just a bad day when every mistake is compounded by a positive on the other side, or so it seems like that. But that was a big possession. And, I know no one gives credit for the play being called, right? The player didn't execute the play that was called. Now, maybe there needed to be more plays called or whatever. I'm not going to disagree with that. But at times, there was some good things that were happening out there. It's just not enough of them. And to me, the frustrating, I'm going to sound like I'm just repeating myself, is just the mental toughness. It's just hard to watch. It just is. If Indiana's going to lose, go down swinging and have the other team just hit miracle shots, and we would be disappointed and try to point out all the errors and everything there. But when you lose and you don't feel like they gave everything they had, like the loss at Florida State, the loss at Wisconsin, you didn't like them. There were reasons we should have won those games, but again, the fight was there. I didn't see the Illinois game, but what I heard was that the Illinois game was like that until the last 2 or 3 minutes. But why isn't it a standard every game? And numbers, no numbers. The numbers that count are 9 and 7, and you're barely hanging on to a NCAA berth. You got moved up in the net to 37, and you're in the 8-9 range. Well, now you got you're back down back in the 10-11 range. So it's a no numbers game for me. It was an attitude and awareness effort. You got to be aware.
Yeah.
You just got to be if you're going to win big games.
Hold the thought on mental toughness. I want to make a statement about that when we get on the other side of the break. All right, coming up here on the Assembly Call, we are going to hand out some game balls, Mike Roberts Hustle Award. That'll be interesting in this game. Hit any other lingering storylines. Then we're going to look ahead to Indiana's next opponent. All of that, plus last call, coming on the Assembly Call. Stick with us.
What's up, y'all? It's Devontae Green giving you the green light to watch Assembly Call after every IU game. Just don't listen to their opinions about shot selection. Remember, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Go Hoosiers.
Thank you, Devontae. You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. While you're there, make sure that you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 7,000 of your fellow IU fans have subscribed. You can text IU to 66866 to subscribe to the newsletter as well. That is IU to 66866. You get a weekly Indiana basketball news roundup, plus our post-game analysis emails when you subscribe. I'm Jerod Morris here with Coach Brian Tonsoni. Ryan and Andy both had to pop off. We are finishing up our breakdown of Indiana's 4-point loss to Rutgers. Coach, I think the theme of this show is that Indiana just wasn't tough enough. Just weren't tough enough, didn't get to enough loose balls. And I will say, whenever we mention this, people get all up in arms like we're making excuses. It's not an excuse. Indiana should have won this game. But, sometimes when you look at players who aren't available, in certain games it matters more than others. I think there's an argument to be made that Trey Galloway missing the Iowa game was a positive for Indiana because I don't think he was a good fit in that game at all. I think he would have been played off the court as it was. Joey Brunk obviously would have helped, just because we got into foul trouble. But I think today, Indiana really missed those two guys. And again, I say that not as an excuse, but to recognize those two guys and not forget about them. But I think this particular matchup, this particular game against this team, and with the esprit de corps that Indiana brought out there, just the lack of that they brought out there, I think those two guys whose games are based on grit and hustle and toughness, even though they're rough around the edges, I think it might have made a difference today. So I just say that to recognize those guys. It's not an excuse for what Indiana did today, but this is the kind of performance where you miss that. And unfortunately, no one else stepped up to provide what you didn't have from those guys. And that needed to happen. But just little recognition for those two guys because I think this is a game that they would have really been important in.
Yeah, and, I'll point out to our listeners, too, there's a difference between playing hard and being aware. I think Jerome Hunter played hard today because he looked for his shots. He hit some big shots. He was aggressive. And so I think he was playing hard. I don't think he was very aware defensively. And there's a difference because you have to play hard and be aware, both in order to win games in this tough Big Ten. I think Al Durham plays hard. I don't think he was aware. There was a play where a guy hit a three on an out of bounds, and they pre-switch, and Al thought that he was getting screened, and the guy cut without really a screen, and Hunter thought he wasn't getting screened, so they both stayed with the big in the middle of the lane, and the guard cut out. Well, those were the two guys who were probably the most or the least aware defensively tonight. And I imagine if I went back and graded out the film, you're going to look at 20-plus points of their lack of awareness to the scouting report and to just the basic strategy of what they've done. They have switched that ball, the out of bounds, all year long. All year long. And it was a lack of communication, lack of awareness. And when you lose by 4 to a hungry team in this, you can't have 20-plus from a lack of awareness. And I'm sure other players had moments, too, of lack of – you're going to have game slippage. Every game is not perfect. Every game you're going to have slippage and those things. But it really stands out when it happens over and over and over again. And that's all in that category of mental toughness. These guys want to win. They want to get out there and play. They mean well. But you got to back it up with that awareness. And it's not just enough to break out in a sweat and do those things and play hard. but the awareness piece goes away. The last 12 minutes of the Iowa, very aware where the shooters were on catches. It was on point, excellent, and you did not see that today. And then a good team or a decent team like Rutgers will take advantage of it and win. So to me, that's what mental toughness and all of that is all about from the coaching perspective.
Let's go game ball quickly. I think we can still have this segment. It's not like this was a total no-show. It was disappointing, but not a total no-show performance. My game ball goes to Armaan for all the reasons I laid out before. I just think he was overall Indiana's best player. Despite the sprained ankle, stayed out there, toughed it out, made some big shots. Even though he had a bad start, I thought he rebounded to be Indiana's best player. The problem was he wasn't good enough as Indiana's best player to win because they had Ron Harper and Geo Baker that were better than anybody we had. So I'm going with Armaan. Do you have a different choice for game ball?
I'm going to go with Armaan as well. From this point of the toughness, he was hurt and he fought his way through. He had some struggles and he bounced back. He hit some big shots. He stayed with it. Missed some layups that we ended up scoring on, but he was ready to shoot the threes later. That's the kind of guy I want my foxhole. It wasn't one of his better games, but it wasn't a horrible game either. And I think we're going to win a lot more games as he develops over the next few years. That's my kind of guy, and I think he deserves the game ball.
Yep. All right, next segment.
Coach Robert's Real Hustle Award.
Well, we've talked all game about how there wasn't enough toughness and hustle.
No, I got one.
But I have one too. You want to go first? Because I have a guy that I think deserves this in addition to Armaan.
I'm going with Khristian Lander.
I was too. Okay. State your case because I was going to go with him too.
Khristian Lander. And here's why. And I know it hurts, and I can't read any news, and I got to go to the school around here in Lafayette. But it hurts. It hurts to lose. Losing's awful, and it's unacceptable. But that young man's sticking with it. His last two performances were acceptable, and they were at crunch time. In Iowa, and a big part of the reason we won was Khristian Lander, and then he backed it up tonight. Yep. His effort, and I know sometimes when you see him closing out on a shooter late, but he might have been in the right position. I'd have to go back and look. Was he?
He was on that one play. He was. There was a miscommunication. Right. He recognized it and ran out to try to challenge the shot. That was not his fault. That was him actually being aware. Yeah.
When you see on Twitter and everyone's like the guy running out to contest the shots, he was out of position. No, maybe he was in position, but someone else wasn't. He was covering. I thought his taking drives in the chest was really good. And a couple times he got caught in the screen. He melts in the screen. Sometimes he's got to be out in point and feel. But, boy, I like the way he was bouncing with the basketball, and he hits a couple shots today that with an offensive challenge perimeter. And I think eventually you put him and Armaan out there, you got a couple north-south guys.
Yep.
Guys that can really, really, really go. And it's always going to be the defensive side for him. I thought he hustled today up to where he is at this point in his development. It's got to get better. But he hustled enough to get the award, I think.
Look, the problem with this game is you had a winnable game right there in a spot you really had to win it. And your upperclassmen just let you down. Like, you could make a very strong case. Anthony Leal played 16 minutes, Khristian Lander played 11, Jordan Geronimo played 6. You can make a really – now, maybe if they got overexposed and played more, they wouldn't have played as well. That's a counterfactual that's always there. But I think you could make a really strong case that those guys should have played more. Like, I know Leal had the bad turnover and wasn't really looking for a shot, but he had 3 tough rebounds and 3 assists. Like, he was really looking to get the ball inside. And so, of all the positives to take from today, I think you take Armaan's play, because I think this was another just good step for Armaan to play through an injury and still be a guy who produced. I remember Archie's first season, he talked about guys who have a responsibility for production. Armaan is a guy who clearly takes that responsibility seriously and figured out a way to produce today, even if it wasn't that efficient. But that's really good. The other thing is those freshmen. We didn't get to see Trey, but Anthony Leal, Khristian Lander, Jordan Geronimo, they're coming on. And a lot of times, this is when freshmen come on. We talk a lot about that 2016 team. Things really turned for that team when OG and Juwan became regular members of the rotation. And remember, they would get in there and you'd be like, damn, we always seem to play better when OG and Juwan are playing. And as the season progressed, they got more time. It takes freshmen some time sometimes. So, I'm walking away from this game thoroughly frustrated, thoroughly disappointed. There's nothing about today overall that's a positive, because when you have a must-win game and your star doesn't show up and your upperclassmen guards don't show up and you feel like you got out-coached, that's a pretty big ball of crap, So it's not an overall positive. But if you're looking for something that might be a bright spot that Indiana can build on, these young guys kind of feeling like the light bulb is turning on, that's the thing I'm going to cling to for hope. And I will say this about Armaan for the hustle. You mentioned the play where he, at least tried to close out on the guy. I thought there were a couple plays also where...
You mean Lander, right?
Lander, yes, sorry, Lander. He's been a guy who's just been driven to the basket like crazy all year long. And I thought there were a couple times today Young tried to drive him, and Khristian bodied him up and forced a tough shot. There was one time when Khristian chased him around a screen and Young curled in. It was a really smart play by him, and he ended up getting fouled. That's just an old guy taking advantage of a young guy and making the right basketball play. But there were other times that that Khristian really bodied up the dribbler and just prevented a guy from just driving straight to the basket. And there were other guys who weren't doing that. So, it wasn't just making shots. I thought he did play harder and smarter in that awareness you're talking about. So it's nice to see because, we've been wanting to see him play more and you've been wanting to see the flashes. Why was this guy a 5-star? I think today you saw a little bit of it. You saw that confidence. The other thing I like about him right now, Coach, is he's starting to understand shot selection a little bit more. And I think in this case, you always want to have to slow a guy down rather than speed him up. So every time he touches the ball, you can see he's thinking about shooting. You can almost see the thought bubble go up above his head. Yeah. But he doesn't now. All the shots he took today were good shots within the flow of the offense, and that's really important.
And he's trying to run offense. He's trying to command the team while he's out there. Still passing sometimes a long pass. You go, oh, don't get that. But he's coming. If this is the sign of his development, that's a good thing. And I know I'm over positive about this. I will always root for the Hoosiers and try to find glimmers of hope. But the last two recruiting classes, those players. If Lander can get going, those are the guys, we're talking TJD, number one player, Armaan, and then Galloway now starting, and then you got Leo coming on, Geronimo coming on, and maybe Lander coming on. Those last two recruiting classes are starting to show maybe what's the plan. The first two recruiting classes have been too up and down, other than Race Thompson. I think you look at those, and you got guys that are too up and down. And so I'm reaching, Jerod, for some hope that if the plan is to get guys like those guys, and Joey Brunk is in that recruiting class last year too, brought in for things. So I just keep holding on to that despite the frustration.
This team is so funny. This team was pegged early in the season as a fringe top 25 team. Boy, are they proving it. Because every time they fall outside of the range of 22 to 26 or 27, the next result pulls them back in, right? They got up to 14 before the Texas game. They get blown out, and now they're down to 27. Today they inched up. I checked KenPom earlier today. They inched up to 21. Well, got to get them back to 24. So you lose to Rutgers. It's this team is there's just a weight. You fall down to the mid-30s. Hey, let's go beat Iowa on the road. Bump back up to the mid-20s. So, look, this team is what it is. They are a fringe top 25 team. But the question is, you still have to win games. You don't get into the NCAA tournament because your KenPom is good. And there are teams every year that the computers like, but they don't win enough games. And you play a tough schedule, and all that stuff does not matter. You have to win games. And I will not entertain one excuse about this team's schedule if they don't have enough wins come NCAA tournament time, because they lost at home to number 71 Northwestern, lost at home to number 41 Rutgers, lost at home to a Purdue team that is okay, but not great. You should be able to beat them at home. That's 3 games right there. You take care of business right there, you are feeling good. So, it's interesting to look at the computer numbers, and I think they show you that this team does some good things, but you've got to win games. And this team is just letting these winnable games slide by them, and it's going to get too late if they don't start winning, soon.
Yeah, the good thing is you take a look at the teams that we have out at Delphi Bracketology, and but you got to be above 500, I think, this year. But there's some teams I think Maryland might even deserve to be in right now, and they're 3-6 in the Big Ten because of their wins. So it's kind of a crazy year. The other thing too is, and again, not making excuses, but sometimes it's when you play teams. We had unfortunate ability to play Northwestern when they reeled off 3 in a row, and now they can't win. Clemson was 9-1 and thought to be a 2 or 3 seed, and then they have COVID, and they've come out and been boat raced 3 times in a row. I'm pretty sure they don't have their legs. So, if you're playing Clemson right now, that's a good time to be playing Clemson. Maybe we caught Rutgers at a bad time, just enough to play bad and lose by 4 because they were hungry after 5. You got to play.
They've lost 5 in a row. Catch them at a bad time. I know what you mean.
No, it is though.
But it's one of those things you always kind of see in hindsight.
Hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this
still should have just won the damn game.
It's just brutal. I mean, it's a brutal schedule, and the response has to be, the standards of excellence have to be there every possession, every game. Yep. And the truth is they're not. I'm not making excuses, but you're going to get teams that are good, and you might get teams that are good and on a real hot stretch. That's my point. How do you beat them? With your standards of play and awareness every single night out. And Indiana's not doing that as a program, and it needs to be addressed.
Just get a good game from your superstar, and you win this one. It's even with all the warts, it was as simple as that. So, that's going to end up being my, kind of what I leave this game with. Indiana wasn't tough enough, and they usually go how Trace goes, and Trace wasn't tough enough. It's just got to be better. Let's look ahead real quick, Coach. Indiana they were scheduled anyway. Their next scheduled game was next Saturday against Michigan, so they were going to have a week off, then play a Michigan team that is obviously rolling. Michigan had to shut things down. There was a strain of the new, UK variant of the coronavirus in their program. They shut things down. So that game is going to be postponed or canceled. I don't know what they're going to do about actually postponing or rescheduling the games. But that now sets Indiana up for back-to-back games, home against Illinois, home against Iowa. Usually you look at 2 straight home games against good teams and you're like, okay, here's a chance to, pull off some upsets. As you said, Indiana's losing all these games at home. So maybe it's actually a bad thing. But, look, you look at games against number 7 and number 4 and you think, all right, those are going to be tough games to win. Doesn't matter. You're 4-5 in the league. You have got, at a minimum, you've got to win one of those games. And I think if you can win those 2, beat the teams above you, and get back, your head above water at 6-5, these are home games. We should be winning these games. Iowa and Illinois are not so good that we can't beat them at home. Let's just go do it. Stop messing around and, having these crap bad starts and these random games that we just don't play well. Whatever you got to do. If we got to do the rock bottom speech again, whatever. Get our backs up against the wall. Backs are against the wall, guys. You're 9-7, 4-5 in the league. 2 big opportunities to bolster your NCAA tournament resume. Restore some sanity inside of Assembly Hall. Just go do it. You can beat both of these teams. You already beat one of them, and you played, pretty well on the road against another one, even though they, killed you late. But let's go. So anyway, 2 really big opportunities. Indiana's got to win at least one. But I think it's fair to say they need to win both of these games. They're home games. And now, because you've got to pick up for those losses, those home losses that we already talked about. You got to start making up for them. So you put yourself behind the 8 ball, and now you're going to have to do something a little bit unexpected to get on the other side of it. So let's go. Let's win them. That's my mentality coming into this. I'm not going to give them a pass because they're playing top 10 teams. You've now put yourself in a position where you have to beat those top 10 teams at home for, I think, anybody to start feeling really good about this thing again. That's where I'm at. I don't know if that's too harsh or whatever, but that's where I'm.
No, I think it's fair. For me, it's just play. I can accept a loss down the road, and there are going to be losses. You got 9 games left. You're not going to run the table. If they run the table, we'll have a lot of great shows, and it'll take care of itself. But I don't believe Indiana will run the table. What I want them to do is play 9 great games. Not have some of the lapses. I want them to play all connected, and not have 1 or 2 that are not aware of what's going on defensively when you switch an out of bounds that you've been switching for 9. Those are the mistakes that you shouldn't be making at this point of the season. So for me, it is, if you could play consistently, and if that results in a loss, then you take your hat off, shake their hand, and move on, because the other team was just better than you at that point. I don't think Rutgers was better than Indiana today. I think Indiana allowed them to be better, and that bothers me. Congratulations to Rutgers. I thought they played with a purpose, and therefore deserved to win. Not taking anything away. They deserved to win the way they played and the way they were more physical and aggressive. But if you match it, we win by 7-8 points. I think, that's easy to say.
You are listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember to check out our friends at Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code Assembly20 at checkout. You'll get 20% off your entire order. That promo code works all year long. It's Assembly20 at homefieldapparel.com. Coach, I just looked in the chat. Ann popped in here an hour and 15 minutes into the show and says, "Where's Ryan Phillips' rant?" So I think we know why people come here, right? We're just here for the window dressing around Ryan's rant. You got to show up early for that, though. It was a good one, so you can rewind the show and go back to the beginning. It's a good rant. But Coach, let's wrap up here. I don't know if there's a lot left to say, but any final thoughts that you want to leave the audience with here?
No, it's constant. When you're a coach, it's a constant work in progress. But the inconsistency bothers me. It just does. That we've seen enough play that shows that Indiana can be better. And we've seen a lot of play that shows that they're not better. And it's 9-7, and it's at a point of frustration. Where you don't get a 2 or 3 or 4 game winning streak. You can understand the Big Ten's tough, and you lose a couple here and you lose a couple there. But to be 2-3 at home, it's just not acceptable. And the bottom line is you have to find the right buttons to push with these guys. And I'm going to say this: I think it's time to change the lineup. Look what Pikel did today. They lost 5 in a row. They changed it up, and they got a better effort. I think it's time to either look at a smaller lineup or whatever. I don't know who you go with, but, and I'm not ready to maybe just say that out loud publicly, but maybe some of your inconsistent players need to sit. Maybe one of them. I don't know. Maybe it's time for an all-freshman starting lineup against Illinois just to do
This
something.
is on the radio, so you did just say it publicly, just to be clear.
No, I know, but I mean names. I'm not gonna browbeat a player.
We're live. It's a live show.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
with
but
you,
I
Coach.
mean, name who I would pull out of the starting lineup. But something has to be done to either find some offense, find a better connected defense, or at least you sat Rob for a while, and then you have Trey being hurt. I don't know. It's just at a point where you can't have good things. You feel so good after Thursday, and you go into today like, please win this one. You can understand you got Iowa, then you split Iowa and Illinois, and you're on your way to a decent run. But no, you lose. So I'm at a high level of frustration. I always wear the IU gear. I'll be there at the Illinois game, believing they're going to win and rooting like crazy and trying to find the positives because the coaching staff's going to go to work and the players are going to go to work. But it's just frustrating, Jerod, to have to come on here and say a lot of the same things over and over and over again when but there's always the next game. You string 2 or 3 together and it's a different feel. And,
Yeah, I know.
that's all you got to do is just kind of keep the faith and root for your team. And if it's so bad, there's Gonzaga. Gonzaga will win and win by 30 every game, and you won't feel like this.
Good cheer for Gonzaga.
But I cheer for Indiana. I've been a football season ticket holder for 30 years. I've had a lot of these kind of seasons, and it just sucks. But,
Except don't cheer for Gonzaga because we want them to lose so that the 1976 team remains.
yeah, lose at least once.
Yeah.
So maybe you'll have some heartbreak.
Yeah.
Go to Baylor or something.
Yeah.
They got good gear at home field.
You summed it up, Coach. Frustrated. We all got on here on the Iowa postgame show, and none of us were really willing to kind of buy in and fully believe. We kept it at arm's length. But man, I woke up today and I just felt good. I really, for some reason, had that visceral feeling, which I haven't had much this year because I haven't really believed in this team that much. I've always kind of been worried. And I woke up today and I was like, man, maybe something unlocked there those last 12 minutes against Iowa. Surely they're going to come out and play well today. And just didn't. And I feel like a damn fool. I really do, because I was tweeting ever since the Iowa game, all the reasons to be skeptical because they never back up good big performances with a good one. I knew logically all the reasons why this could go bad and probably would go bad, and like an idiot allowed myself to believe and even publicly said hey, I feel good about how they're going to play today.
Yeah,
dumbass.
Yeah, that's it. That
wasn't live.
No, that wasn't live. I say that just to say I hate that. I hate that as a fan. You guys know me, especially the longtime listeners. I want to believe in this team. And for so long, especially early in the show or early when we were doing these shows, it always felt like there was a legitimate reason to believe in the team and to argue for why they'd win the next game. And it's just so much fewer and farther between, like those moments now. And it's frustrating and it stinks. I hate going into games, feeling the sense of dread and then having the sense of dread confirmed. And that's happened too often the last few seasons. And I especially hate going into games feeling real good about things and then being smacked in the face with it like today. So, I think like the team does, just got to turn the page on this one. It was disappointing, and if you look at this game as like, okay, I just can't anymore with this team. Beat Iowa, lose to Rutgers. I got to step away for a while. Like, do what you got to do. We're not going to do it. I'm going to show up like you, coach, for the Illinois game. Hope for the best. I think you got to stick with the team. This team still does some good things. They've won some games. They've still got a lot to play for this season. But God, that's not going to take away the sting from this one. This was another home game like the Purdue game and like others where you get worked up and you say this is one where you got to take care of business, and Indiana doesn't take care of business. That's what we are right now. We're a program that can step up sometimes and get a big victory out of nowhere, but we don't take care of business in the games we need to. And that's a roller coaster, man. That is a roller coaster. The last coach was let go because it was too much of a roller coaster. And right now, the style is different. The way it looks on the court is different. But the results, are kind of the same from what we saw, without the peaks of a Big Ten title every now and then. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Frustrated, disappointed. There was a game to be won today, and Rutgers just came out and grabbed it from Indiana, and Indiana let them do it. And that is very disappointing. All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thank you to Bob Thompson, who produces a lot of the music that you hear on the show. And thank you for listening. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you Thursday night. We can finally do AC radio. Until then, keep your... Oh, wait, that's not me.
Take it from me, Max Bielfeldt. Keep your calves flexed, your elbows in, and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Here I come, Mrs. Stansoni. I don't like carrots.
By the way, today's intro segments brought to you by guys who have had great, memorable moments against Rutgers in the past. Juwan Morgan, who had his senior day 25 points on 11 of 13 shooting. Devontae Green, who had that thrilling end-of-game alley-oop with IU up 21 that Tom Crean reamed him out for. And the only issue I have with that play is that Freddie McSwain didn't complete it because it was actually a really good pass, and it would have been a great dunk. And then Max Bielfeldt, who had 18 points, 14 rebounds against Rutgers in that December 2015 game, where Indiana almost lost to the 279th ranked Rutgers Scarlet Knights in Rutgers, but he and OG pulled Indiana back from the brink, and that really kind of got that season had been teetering on the brink a little bit previously, but that really got those two guys going, and we know what happened the rest of that season. So hat tip to those guys. Could have used any of them. Well, maybe not Devontae. But could have used the other guys. Unless it was one of the good Devontae shooting games, and then we obviously could have used him. Green light. Jerome kind of played like Devontae today. Anyway.
Man, Jerome offensively is so fun to watch right now. But defensively, he's lost.
Yeah.
He
is
just lost.
And and there's sometimes he just doesn't play hard on defense. Like, I will say that about him. There was one play, you remember the coast-to-coast play he had where we had numbers, it was 3-on-1, he tried to do the Euro step and lay it in, which, I don't know, like he got a good attempt at the basket, so I understand why he took it. He was on a shorter guy. Maybe could have kicked it out, whatever. He just missed it, but then came back on the other end and was just standing flat-footed, and guy just drove right by him, and they got it inside, for a foul. Like he's going to make some mental mistakes, but you got to, if you're going to make mental mistakes, be in a stance with your butt low, trying. And he was kind of hanging his head after missing the shot, and you can't do that.
Basketball is such in every sport you could probably pull out these types of things, but if one person lets up defensively, your whole team lets up defensively. If one person's not aware defensively, then it's a breakdown, right? And if one person that makes a bad choice on offense, it's just so important to get everyone on the same page. And you have seasons where it just seems like it'll click at some point and then it won't click at others. And that's just, it's a struggle all the way around to try to flatten that out to where you don't have such ups and downs,
I just saw the stat from Jeff Borzello from Elias. Since Archie Miller became Indiana's head coach in 2017-18, the Hoosiers are just 2-9 in games immediately following a win over an AP top 25 team. Which, man, when Archie was hired, like, he's this no-nonsense guy, right? He doesn't get too high or too low almost ever. Like, he's the same all the time. He's not clappy on the sidelines. He's not cheering and stuff. That seems ironic. You would think a guy like that, you'd have kind of an even-keeled team because he's kind of even-keeled. But there's something, when it's a number like that and it's happened consistently over 4 years, there's got to be something systemic. Like, I don't know if he's really good at going into that well of chewing guys out and having hard practices and it can produce a good result, but then you can't do that all the time because if you go to that well too often, it doesn't work, and then he backs off and they relax. It's like there's some disconnect there.
I absolutely 100% agree, and it needs to be fixed. I think his guys at Dayton played with the chip on their shoulder because they were at Dayton.
Yeah.
And when you go in and put X's and O's, you go in and put a scouting report, those guys know that, we've got to execute exactly how it is to win in this conference, or when they get in the NCAA tournament and go to the Elite Eight, they wanted to pull off some upsets. When you play with that chip on your shoulder, I think Archie has struggled in the recruiting area of getting guys that will play naturally with a chip on their shoulder. And then what happens as a coach is this guy's good offensively, this guy's good defensively, this guy likes to be yelled at, this guy doesn't, and you twist yourself into a pretzel trying to manage a team. I think he handled Romeo that way. Like, they had that 11-game loss, and he just kept preparing for the next game, which is what coaches do. And then after that Minnesota game, he lit into them and got better performance. So I think, that he's got to figure out a way to coach at Indiana and get guys that are talented enough to win at Indiana and play with that natural chip on his shoulders, because the X's and O's are there. I know we don't like the offense and that, but if you sit back and look at the college coaches and you go to clinics and you hear what he's attempting to do, and, it's just like that timeout. They weren't getting the ball inside the TJD. Boom, 4 straight possessions going into TJD. It's not like he's not aware. I think what's missing is that a proper button pushing from game to game, inside games. You see it sometimes at halftime. He'll come out and he'll rip them at halftime, and all of a sudden they'll play better. What that shows to me is that you got multiple guys on this team that need different motivational tactics, and I'm not making an excuse. As a head coach, you got to figure it out, and Archie hasn't, because that's why you have the up and down play. And when it clicks, it's Iowa. And when it doesn't, it's you're 54-50 at Northwestern, and you think you have the game won. And that I hate calling it softness, but that just lack of attention to detail costs you a game because you don't guard Aujane or whatever, and you let him go for 9 straight points. And it's not easy when you have programs like that. At high school, it's hard. It's even harder because you just got the guys that go to your district for the most part, unless you're one of those private schools on ESPN. How do you get guys that don't guard? How do you use them? You need them on offense, but you got to hide them on defense. You wish you had a complete roster, and that's where I've always fallen back on his roster construction. His first 2 recruiting classes have not panned out the way they've wanted. And now that's the old compartment, that get old, stay old plan. Those are the guys, and they're not performing on a consistent basis. But, Rob and L. And Jerome's been there just now. He's really a sophomore, though. If you count that, this is a young and inexperienced team to some extent. And please don't think, listeners, that I'm making excuses, because your job is to win. Your job's to win. A lot of programs win with freshmen and sophomores. Your job is to figure out how to push the right buttons.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, this. Your dad's coach. Sometimes you did the right thing, and sometimes you yelled at a kid, and it took away his confidence. And sometimes, maybe you let something slide because you didn't think the kid needed to be yelled at, and he didn't play hard.
Yeah.
And I think there's been way too much of trying to figure that out in these first 4 years. And you got to worry about recruiting at that edge. If you run kid off, then how do other people recruit against you? And I just think there's been a bunch of swings and misses with getting guys to play with an edge.
Yeah.
And maybe that is ultimately a new direction down the road if Dolson thinks that, someone else is more equipped to handle the Indiana situation, or maybe Archie figures it out, or maybe another recruiting class comes in and, he's got, more guys that play with that kind of chip on the shoulder. I think the freshmen have it. I like Lander because I was worried about him having it. But I think what he's shown the last two times that he come in and he'll learn. I think the sophomores have it more consistently than anyone else. I'm pulling.
No, and to be fair with Trace, he didn't have it today, but he's had it a lot more this year because we've talked about how he's been better at being consistent. He wasn't today, and hopefully today is one of those blips you look back on. It's like, man, Trace had an awesome season, but boy, that Rutgers game was an outlier. Because he hasn't done. He's had some moments in games like this, but he's always turned it around and figured it out, and he just never figured it out today.
It was interesting. I was on I think I said this on a post game one time before too, and it just really. It was eye-opening to me, but it was IU Purdue preview, and Bobby Riddell, who's a color commentary now for Purdue Radio, was on. He was a walk-on from West Lafayette.
Hey.
Played at West Lafayette and then walked on at Purdue. And one of the questions was, when did you really know what was going on? And I know he was a walk-on, but he said he never really knew everything that was going on to his junior year. From positioning on defense to what was going to be done offensively. He said the difference between high school and college is so great that you pick things up as a freshman, then you pick things up as a sophomore. And when you're a junior, that's when it really, really, clicks in. And when you erase some of the frustration and embarrassment of losing to Rutgers and all of that stuff, I sit back and go, okay, 6 of our guys, 3 of our starters are sophomores and freshmen, and 6 of our 10 guys who are active on the roster, 7 when you count Hunter being a redshirt guy who didn't really practice at all that first year. So you got 7 of 10 guys who are sophomores. That's why there is some inconsistency in play at times when they're out of position on a closeout or whatever else, because they're still grasping everything.
Yeah.
And again, it sounds like I'm making excuses, but I'm not. We have sophomores in our high school that when they're guarding, they get to play a little at 7:30. When they're not guarding, they go back and play JV because they're freshmen and sophomores, and they don't understand how to play at the big time level at our high school level. So,
Coach, there's
it's
a difference.
frustrating.
There's a difference between excuses and explanations, and it sometimes can be a fine line. But I think we've got to be mature enough here to handle the difference between the two and understand that. Even with some of those explanations, Indiana still should have won this game. But there are explanations for why we see some of the things that we see, and it's important to kind of understand the difference between those.
Yeah, and that's all I'm trying to share with people is that, every time we watch film, man, we won a game by 32 last night, and we weren't happy with how we guarded in the first half. And our point after the game was, nice win, but you're going to get some ugly film reviews on Monday. Be ready for it. Because you're just constantly – so everyone might think, well, you had a great game. You really took it to them. Well, no, we should have won by 40 maybe, We got back to basics this week because we didn't guard very well in a 17-point win on last Saturday, and we had a hellacious week of practice. And our guys came out and guarded better on Friday night and guarded for 3/4 of the game on Saturday. So,
Okay, so there's something here, and we're going way long, but this is some interesting stuff, and we'll make this the last topic. Because you said something there that I think is a problem with Archie. Now, look, we haven't seen practice, so I can't say this for sure. This is basing it off comments that you hear in the postgame. And so take all of that with a grain of salt, big fat caveat. But what you just said, we won by 32, but we weren't happy with the defense. That's because it's a mentality of coaching and evaluating against your own standard and against the game, not just against the opponent, right? But it's like, okay, maybe we should have beaten this opponent by 45. Right. We only beat him by 32, so we didn't play well enough. And there might be another game where, look, this team is just way better than you. They should have beaten you by 20. You only lose by 5. Well, as you evaluate your team, you kind of have to understand the difference. And one thing that I've noticed with Archie, and you can tell me if I'm crazy or not, is it kind of feels like that's not how he views it. At least that's not how he explains it. Because there's a lot of times when Indiana will, like the Penn State or the Maryland wins, right? Especially the Penn State win, when Indiana just really didn't play well and you kind of eke out a victory. And maybe he's not supposed to say anything critical in a post game, but you never really, it always seems like, okay, we're just happy to survive. Well, you know what? If we're just surviving against Penn State at home, that's not Indiana basketball playing up to the standards. That's a game that you should win by more, you should play better, right? But it feels like there's a satisfaction there. And it doesn't feel to me, and to me, that would explain why Indiana plays up against good teams and down against other competition, because they're playing against the team, not against the standard for how good they can be. And I see that in his comments, and it makes me question, and the only reason that I put any validity to it is because the performances of the team kind of back that up. So again, I say all that with 10% of the knowledge that you would need to have, but it just feels like that mentality that you talked about, which obviously is the kind of thing that Coach Knight talked about all the time, right? And I don't want to compare the two, but that's kind of the mentality I would like to see from my coach, not satisfaction at barely surviving a game at home that you should win by more, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, I can see where you can get to that conclusion, and I would agree with you based on what you said. But if Archie's not coaching to a set of standards, then we need to go to a different direction. Because I think any coach really does that. Some coaches share it in the media, some coaches don't. You'll hear the coach speak, "Oh, this one's on me," and we're in the locker room going, "No, it was on the point guard who turned the ball over 4 times," but I'll take it in the media. We coaches respect the media and know that all of us have a job to do, but we're not going to go into a whole lot of details. You could tell by body language, and when I was a head coach, the last thing I wanted to do after a game, win or loss, was to really go into deep analysis. I know at the college level you probably have to a little bit more because of the money involved and all of that stuff. But no, I think he just doesn't like talking. So he's going to give real short, not thought out answers that have any deep meaning. I listen to him to see if I can pick up something, and sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. It does, from my vantage point as a coach and as a fan, you do get tired of hearing the same old things over and over again. We got to get lower turnovers. We got to rebound the ball better. But I've also been around a lot of coaches, and we've talked, and it's like, we're not going to say too much publicly. But if you're not trying to coach your team to a standard, and then that has to be evaluated by the people who are around the program, then I would be very, very disappointed in any coach. Any coach. I think Fred Hoiberg has a standard to play, and they're the worst team in the Big Ten. I would be disappointed if he's not. Now, the execution of that, are you spending too much time prepping for the next team instead of getting back to the fundamentals? Even some of the best coaches, it comes down to teaching, Jerod.
Yeah.
Are you teaching? Or are you a strategy coach, a technical coach? And I think where your truth of your statement could be is he trying to spend time watching film of recruits coming up? Is he spending time trying to prepare the scout for the next thing and the game plan for the next thing? If we could see practice, are there enough fundamentals being done in practice? And all of us get caught up in that. Like I said, we went back to basics after we thought a couple of weekends of not guarding. We won some games, we're not guarding. And we really, it was, if your hand wasn't up, sticking the eyes, you were running immediately. We went back to that, and it showed progress, and that sounded like what he did. So sometimes you get caught up in winning games, and then you got to pinch yourself, and you got to say, hey, we got to get back. We got to get back to the basics. And in college, when you have 20 hours, and some of that includes the game prep, and you got flights, and you got other things like that, I think those fundamentals can really go if you really don't pay attention to them. That's what I would worry about and wonder about with this IU program. With that lack of awareness is, are you just going, what's going on in practice to really make sure the attention to detail. I think he's trying too hard to make the players happy, to make the program happy, to find ways to win. It's all backfiring on him. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just got to be who you are. And if that's not good enough, and maybe he is, But I thought we'd see a lot more transition. I think we'd saw a lot more toughness because that's what Archie Miller was known for. And I think starting with Romeo and even Devontae and Justin Smith, I think he tried too hard to make everything work to move the program ahead, and it's not showing on results. That's my take.
Yeah. I don't know. We're just two guys on a mic and don't see practice and don't see anything. So I always hesitate to say that stuff, but I don't know. I guess we're just searching 4 years in. I'm just searching for answers for why we don't beat the teams we're supposed to beat. You know, like I want to have a program that takes care of business. You know, lose the games you're supposed to lose, win a few of the ones you're supposed to lose, and win the games you're supposed to win. And then you're going to compete for Big Ten titles. And we're sitting here in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten or worse because we occasionally win games we're not supposed to, but then we lose a lot of games we're supposed to win. And that's just not the formula for getting IU basketball back to where it needs to go. So,
yeah, again, it's when you have a tough schedule, your margin for error is small in that realm. You know, it just is. And Indiana's margin for error is small, and tonight they didn't cover it. And they need to, and they need to take care of these games. But I'm telling you, the craziness is happening in the Big Ten. I mean, Maryland is 3-6 and has 3 road wins against ranked opponents.
It's insane.
Minnesota's ranked 17th, and they're 4-5, tied with Indiana in the Big Ten.
And they either win by 15 or lose by 15. Every game.
and you know, Indiana's more in games, I think, or they just lose from a stretch or two. So, you know, watch for Wisconsin to start losing some games. You know, Ohio State gets beat by Purdue at home and then goes in and wins at the Kohl Center. It's a crazy year where Indiana can win the next 2 home games. How do you win if you win Illinois and Iowa and get beat by Northwestern and Rutgers? It makes no sense.
I know at this point, just get to 10 wins somehow, some way. Get to 10 Big Ten wins, you know, and you'll feel good.
Yeah, if you're 10-10, Indiana's going to the tournament, and then you can at least see their name on Selection Sunday and follow them a little bit, and that'll be a little bit of breather. But
yeah, stop these stupid graphics that are coming up with tournament droughts. Never in my life did I think I'd see an NCAA tournament drought graphic for Indiana. I was watching the game on my computer. I wanted to chuck it out of the window.
Yeah, and I always ask this question too. For me, is if you want a sustained program for 15, 20 years. How long does it take to build that program?
Yeah.
Versus instant success, right? Because you could probably go to someone and get instant success, and then it goes away again, and then it comes back and goes away again. We kind of had that in the last regime with kind of a helter-skelter plan and some personality things and all that kind of stuff. Would we rather have that or and I'm not saying this is where we're going, but how long does it take in a Big Ten that's just brutal the last 2 years? You know, and I'm probably just trying to be too positive, but I just think it's a real tough job right now to come into the Big Ten and have any long-lasting success. And then you got Michigan, you know, so that maybe that's different. But, you know, every team we've talked to way too much about every program is different.
Yeah.
I just think this is a result of 20 years of bad decisions compounded with bad decisions, and it's just hard to get out of. It's like
and it all led to losing to Rutgers.
And now, you know, Tampa Bay's about to score again.
I know. Okay, here's well, I'm not even going to say it. I don't want to end it on that note. Just know I had a stat that was going to depress the hell out of you, and I used my discretion to not say it.
Give it to me.
Damn it. All right, so I was listening to the Ion College Basketball podcast.
Yep.
They were talking about Houston.
Yep. I heard it.
Do I even need to say anything else?
No, Sampson's a great coach.
Every year Sampson's been at Houston, they've jumped like from where they were in the preseason to where they ended up in KenPom has been like a massive jump. Loses guys, loses transfers, loses his best player, doesn't matter. And I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, God, you know, like, I mean, everything he did obviously torpedoed the program and that was just a bad cultural fit. But man, in terms of like an actual coach, and nothing depresses me more than sitting here wistfully thinking about Kelvin Sampson after an IU loss. But, you know, losses like this pile up. You wonder what might have been.
Well, you know, That's
Everybody in the chat's like, don't do it. Don't do it. We're here. Let's just, let's just get it all out right now.
Calvin Sampson is a great coach. He was a great coach at Oklahoma. He was a great coach at Indiana from X's and O's. I mean,
yes.
The guy can coach the game of basketball.
Yes.
Some of the characters that he brought in, not Indiana, right? The not following rules, not Indiana. So I always throw it back to all my, who are we? We want Indiana guys. We don't want recruiting violations, and we want kids to go to class, and then we want to win national championships. I think that's harder and harder to do all that. And I'm not asking for being immoral towards winning, but sometimes, I mean, could you imagine if Sampson was in his 20th year now or something and doing what he's doing at Houston, how happy we'd be? The dude can coach.
God.
I've seen him at clinics. I was so excited when he came to IU, and then just when the phone call stuff started hitting. I bought one of them blue shirts with the red tie. I'm all in, Jerod. Every time you could hire Homer Simpson to coach IU, and I think it'd be a great hire until 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And I'm just
all right. We gotta stop. Who knows what topic we'll go to next if we keep going here? We gotta stop, and then we need Indiana to win.
Anything about brakes?
I don't. You need to fix your brakes.
Start crunching. When they start crunching, do you need new ones?
I think so. Think so.
Good topic to end on.
Great topic to end on. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here on this marathon episode of the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Live public therapy in front of everybody as we talk out our deep psychological basketball issues that we're clearly working through.
Hey, we doing a show Thursday night?
Yes, Assembly Call Radio. We can take stock of all this and maybe get some more expansive commentary from Ryan and Andy. So, all right, everybody. We'll talk to you guys Thursday night. Thanks for being here.
See you.